The election of 1828 is known as the dirtiest election in American history. It is also one of the most influential. After losing the election of 1824 to John Quincy Adams, which Andrew Jackson blamed on corrupt bargain, he retried in 1828 and was successful in becoming the seventh president of the United States. During the election, both parties used heavy insult against each other's candidates. Not only did they target the candidate themselves, in case of Andrew Jackson, they even targeted his wife, accusing her of marrying Andrew Jackson before she divorced her previous husband. Due to this, when Andrew Jackson's wife died, he blamed it on John Quincy Adams and his party. In general, the election of 1828 was more about the candidate's personal history than their political idea on how to move the country forward. Known to many as the partner system, in which a political party, after winning an election, gives government jobs to its supporters, friends, and relatives as a reward. The spoils system is basically a system in which merit is taken over by relationship. If you have a better relationship with the person who wins the election, you get jobs as a federal employee. During his presidency, Andrew Jackson replaced around 10% of federal employees. When Andrew Jackson appointed John Eden as his Secretary of War, many of his cabinet's wives refused to accept Peggy Eden as one of their own, due to her marriage scandal with John Eden. Jackson, feeling sympathy towards Peggy Eden due to his wife's situation, asked for his cabinet members to request their wives to accept Peggy Eden as one of their own. When they refused to do so, Jackson asked for their resignation, which allowed him to organize his own cabinet, known as the Kitchen Cabinet. His new cabinet consisted of fans and people who agreed to every word he said. This was used against him by his opponents. The Kitchen Cabinet also gave rise to Martin Van Buren to his presidency. The nullification crisis began with the federal tariffs of 1828 and 1832, which heavily taxed imported goods. This was good for the North, as they were industrial and could produce their own goods, but the South focused mostly on agriculture and had to import goods from other places. This, along with the economical problem already going on in the South, caused South Carolina to call the tariffs unconstitutional. They further threatened to secede from the Union if the tariff was not reviewed. Andrew Jackson, angry at this, forced Congress into passing the Force Act, which allowed him to use the federal army if necessary to collect taxes. This gave the president enormous power. In 1830, Andrew Jackson passed one of the biggest pieces of legislation during his time, known as the Indian Removal Act. This allowed the president to negotiate treaties with Native Americans concerning their lands, but in reality, they were forced out of their homes at gunpoint and sent thousands of miles away to live in the land that was deserted and not important at that given moment. This was opposed by many and only passed the House by one vote. And in 1832, in the case of Worcester versus Georgia, the Supreme Court sided with the Native Americans, saying that it was wrong for them to take the land. To which Andrew Jackson replied, "John Marshall has made his decision. Now let him enforce it." This was followed by a death march known as the Trail of Tears, in which 1/4 of the native population that moved died due to hunger, famine, or other source. Despite being known as a champion for the common man, Andrew Jackson's presidency was more like a dictatorial rule than anything else. He amassed power in presidential seat and made it into what we know it as today. Despite being popular during his time, Andrew Jackson today can be seen as one of the worst presidents the United States has ever had.